A few weeks ago, I told you about Air Force veteran and retired firefighter Patrick Romeo riding his motorcycle for charity.
It was not enjoyable, but but I knew that going in. It's a challenge for a reason. But I guess what it lacked in enjoyment, it made up in satisfaction by finishing it.
He worked with Dr. Chris Ann Gordon of Resurrecting Lives Foundation and raised $16,000.
I spoke to Dr. Chris Ann Gordon the other day. She said there were still some pledges that hadn't yet come in, that they had been not collected yet, but she feels there's still money coming in. She thinks we should be able to hopefully get to 20,000.
Romeo beat his goal of 14 days and rode over 10,000 miles in 13 days.
I averaged about 770 miles a day, probably 18 hours a day in the saddle, and about 4 to 5 hours sleep per night.
He slept with his bike either in a tent or in the grass, but one night in particular he remembers.
Probably the most interesting place I didn't sleep was a little town square. I couldn't even tell you where it was at. It looked like an ideal situation. They had like a pavilion in the center, picnic tables, and so I'd stopped, actually laid down on the picnic table, was talking to my wife. A gentleman, I'll use that term loosely, with his nightly drink and cigarette hanging out of his mouth, like walked within inches of me, past the table, just kind of eyed me up. That's when I took a better look around. I saw the signs for the subsidized housing, parking only, and determined that maybe that wasn't the place to stay. So I got back on the road and headed about another 50, 60 miles down the road.
It was a challenge, but he knew that going in, and he also helped a lot of people. Read on below to learn the impact he had on the veteran community, and to donate, go to resurrectinglives.org or text HOKA-HEY to 44321. In Boardman for WKBN 27 First News, I'm Brandon Jaycees.